Very pleased to be joined now by a friend of the program, back for another go around. He is Gino De Pauli, play-by-play voice of the Swift Current Broncos and all-around awesome dude. Also, man who is part of the most listened to show in the history of Couch Potato Diary. So we're bringing the stars back for this one. Gino, how's it going, sir?
Wait. We have the most listened episode? Get out of here.
Yeah, no, I know. With all due respect, surprised a little bit by it too, because it happened a full year after, like people listened the first time, but a full year after everyone was just like, hey, let's hear this guy's thoughts on stuff. So, not exactly sure how that worked, but it was really big in India. So, if you
We're
ever
we're huge there. That's awesome.
there you go. Let's get into some junior hockey talk. That's what we got you on here for today. Going to cover a lot of ground, but let's start with the ground you're the most familiar with, the Swift Current Broncos season. Thank you to you. I was able to come on and do color commentary a couple of times. Really liked the team, but I would imagine that the season ending a little bit earlier than a lot of people out there would like. Competitive conference, that's going to happen. But before I just keep leading you in a bunch of different directions, just your overall thoughts on how this season went with Swift Current.
Well, I think with Swift, it was an interesting season that starts with general manager Chad Leslie, where you went for it last year. You had Connor Geeky come in. Of course, he's playing in the National Hockey League with the Tampa Bay Lightning, so he's doing some good things there, obviously. But I think there's just a lot of 19-year-olds. What was the direction this team was going to go with the 20-year-olds you had coming back? And Chad Leslie took a chance to kind of sort of not per se run it back again, but try and get to the playoffs and make some noise. Some teams that were all in that same boat. You look at the Central and then the East with Saskatoon and Moose Jaw last year, who ended up being in that East final. It was just kind of like, you know what? Let's just see what we can do here. And that's exactly what we did. Moose Jaw and Saskatoon kind of pivoted. Saskatoon still made the playoffs, but Moose Jaw sold and sold in a very hard way and finished dead last in the league. But the credit to Swift, they kind of stuck with it. They found some gems that weren't drafted guys of their own that were listed prospects like Luke Mistlebacher, who ended up being with 93 points. He's on an ATO with the Iowa Wild. Still can enter the draft, but you'd love to maybe sign a pro deal before that happens because you can. It was an 05. And Clark Caswell had a great season. You know what? The Seattle Kraken pick was led the team in assists with 62. Great captain, lead by example type. And there's just a really good supporting cast of like Ryland Gould, Brady Burney, getting Carlin Dezane, a Calgary kid who was played in Prince George, went on a long run. And when they had Reed Dick in net, especially in the playoffs against Madison Hat, he looked like the Reed Dick that got drafted by Boston. Now he's going to be an NCAA guy going to Colgate, and he really found another gear in the playoffs. So there's a lot of depth and a lot of fun with this team. And you know what? It just didn't work out. You ended up being a 1 versus 8. The East Division was kind of a crapshoot in the last 7 games, and certain things happened for a reason. And then all of a sudden, you're the 8 seed against maybe the number one team in the country right now. That is the Madison Hat Tigers and Gavin McKenna. So
Yeah.
you pushed them to 5, and it probably could have been a 6 spot, maybe minus maybe a game 4 miscue with mental mistakes and overtime. But you know what? That wasn't a 1 versus 8. It just ended up being that way, and it was an overall good season. I think now Chad has a chance to sort of pivot, and we got the draft coming up, and you also have the expansion draft for the new Penticton V's organization. They'll be coming from the BCHL to the Dub, and they get that pick first. So there is a protected list. What that process is, I don't know, but there is NHL-esque moves to it where I'll give you this guy if you don't take this guy, but we're going to give you something else in the sweeteners. So,
Right.
all in all, good season. Lastly, for them, that building only holds 2,890 people. There was not a single game, not even a lowly Tuesday night in October, where there was not more than two, or there was more than 2,000 fans per game. So it was an excellent showing by the community.
Yeah, it's a city that is very passionate about that hockey team, and it does seem like they were rewarded with a pretty good season. And it was tough because like you look at the team and watching them with you, and online and all those things as well. It was a good hockey team, but then it just kind of felt like they kind of got caught up, or maybe not even caught up, but just kind of almost a victim of an arms race in that conference where just it's like at the around the trade deadline did they dip their toe in a little bit, and then Calgary is acquiring everyone and Medicine Hat's making big moves, and they have top prospect in the world for next year and Gavin McKenna too and all those different things. It just felt like they were okay, let's just see what happens. And other teams were like, trade, trade, trade. First round pick, never heard of her, and just making all these big moves. And it felt like it was like, let's see how far this can go while all these other teams are really loading up.
Well, and I think the Broncos kind of become the bank next year too, right? A little bit with
Mhm.
what they have for really good prospects that are 05. So they have elite 20-year-olds that are coming their way. And it's I don't know what the direction is going to completely be, and if I knew anything, I wouldn't be able to disclose that to anybody with which the organization that I work for from basically September to now and beyond. So I think you just hold a lot of opportunity. The '07 group is led by Gavin O'Kenna for that birth year, but there's a lot of '07s and '08s that are really good. And now you're kind of working for that next cycle of junior for an '07 and '08. And now look out, '09s are coming in as 16-year-olds next year. So that makes me extremely sad with when we saw Travis Moen's kid play for the Broncos this year. And yeah, I remember Moen playing in the NHL when I was a kid. So it's come full circle, but you're in that next slot of '07 to '09 with your '05s being overagers and '06s are going to be the 19-year-olds. So you're going to have like the Berkeley Cattons, the Caden Lindstroms. You've got Clark Caswell, but the '06 is maybe not the age strength of the Broncos right now, and they'll have to do again another slight pivot. And again, the East, I think next year, the Eastern Conference is going to be wide open. At the end of the day, you only need to beat three teams. You only need to beat three, and I think the Broncos can do that. And if they have to do a pivot, they will. If they don't want to, then Chad Leslie is going to do what he ever darn well feels like. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the whole age thing. Like, I still actively play MVP Baseball 2005, and the fact that it would be an overager now in junior hockey hurts my soul a little bit. And it happens to like calling some of the HM Live stuff and Silent Ice TV out here, and it's like, yeah, you're doing a 2012 and under thing. It's like, well, that hurts my soul quite a bit. I could
Yes.
we're bordering on I could be grandparent at this point, given different biological things. But you kind of already answered it for me. But looking at next year for the Broncos, because like you said, like they did have or do have quite a few talented players who are either aging out or getting into that overage category. But there is still a bit of a younger-ish foundation there that you can be excited about. It does kind of seem like whatever direction they want to go, there's at least somewhat of a base there that they can kind of build around.
Yeah, the '07s, it starts with Peyton Kettles for me as a really stay-at-home defenseman that, I wasn't sure if he'd make the U18 team or not. I'm not sure if that's happening yet. We'll wait for announcements. Some of the invites have been announced for Team Canada, but he's ranked 26th among North American skaters, if I'm not mistaken. And as a defender, he kind of reminds me if he's going to make some money, he's got to be big and tough and glassing out. I kind of look at an Eric Branson type sort of shutdown. And now maybe Peyton doesn't agree with me, and that's fine. But you've got those '07s, like Josh McGregor was a signed prospect because he had some NCAA aspirations. He's on the players to watch list. And then you look at Sawyer Dingman as an '08. Yeah, big, strong, going to be like his dad that just scares people one day. And also Daxon Urex as an '08. They brought in some really good guys. Not Travis, Carter Moen as an '09 will have his first full season. It'll be a fun young group to watch. And guys like Callum Brownlee of Manitoba, another '09. And you've got Aiden Sexsmith from Calgary, Jay Nalescu out of BC. They're all '08s. They're kind of coming up at the same time and trying to run it back. I think this is a big year for chemistry for this team and what they might have as forwards. They've signed a lot of late picks that maybe weren't coming before because of the old NCAA rules, and now they're going to come play in the Western League. So I think Chad found a bunch of steals again as a GM, and now just got to try and formulate and put it together. And you've got some veterans like Ryland Gould, Grayson Burzinski, and Joey Rocha. Connor Dale had one hell of a playoff for the Broncos, being a hero in one and almost being a hero again. So there's pieces to figure out what you want to be, or you could start here and you might not end where you want to be, but you're going to have your answers by December of next year of where this team is going.
Yeah, it's I think it's going to be very, very fascinating. You bring up the NCAA thing a couple of times now, and I mean that could be a podcast episode, a podcast series on its own. Obviously, how you view that partnership, I think, falls very firmly into which league you follow. But I do think that it is. It's interesting to see, like, okay, what are maybe not unintended side effects, but what are some of the different ways we can use this? And chatting with Lauren Kelly last week about some Flames prospects, and they're like, okay, well, they're probably going to age out of the Ontario Hockey League, but they now have this extra thing that isn't the AHL. I think that's an interesting way. And like you said, it provides maybe a few more signing opportunities for some teams as well. So I've been fascinated to see all the different outcomes that have come with this new partnership that we only ever really dreamed of a decade ago.
Yeah, and I think the Western League got it, and so did major junior guys. And now you're kind of tiering hockey for the first time in a long time in Canada. Yet the Western League has always been the number one league. I've never not said that, but there was guys that, hey, you didn't want to go there. That's their choice. Like a Holloway, a McCarr, and Bernard Docker, and man, I could go down the list like Jonathan Taves. Who knows if he does what he way back in the day? Because you remember he was a draft pick but never touched the ice, and maybe with Austin Matthews too. But you look at it and you extend runway for older guys and unsigned guys to go, like Carlin Dezane for the Broncos as an example. Was never drafted, signed by the Tigers, the
Yeah,
Mesnet Tigers, then traded to Prince George, traded to Swift Current, now going to the Yukon Huskies. That sounds like a pretty cool payoff for yourself. And
totally.
you get to bet on yourself a little bit more. And I know, it's going to kind of pool talents to certain spots, and now junior A is going to probably be known as tier two, unfortunately. I know, being from the other side of that spectrum, that's kind of that's hurtful, but just the way the agreements have, you might be a farm system, you might be a really good farm system one day, and you still might have a really good idea of where you're going to be. Like if you're, I don't know, say affiliated with like you're drafted by, oh, let's just say Lethbridge. So maybe you're going to be based out of, I don't know, well, not Tabor, they don't have a rink, but just maybe Estevan or something like that. Or even for teams like, let's in Saskatchewan, like Estevan or Weyburn to Moose Jaw or something where you can kind of be close by, kind of like an AHL team, and you do it that way.
Yeah.
Some teams won't like that, but hey, it is what it is. Olds could be the feeder to Red Deer. I don't know. I'm not even suggesting that's what's going to happen because it may not. And NCAA guys are still going to go to junior A because that's where their size or their skill set needs to be, and they'll take that longer time. So, but again, now you're opening up the U.S. market a little bit more to bring U.S. players in that you draft, but they want to play for the development team, which is still a really big thing for a lot of American-born players, or guys want to go to North Dakota, but hey, you could still go to North Dakota, but why don't you play here first? And if they really like you, you're going to be a really good hockey player, and you can be convinced to go play at the Ralph Engelstad when you're 21 or 22 instead of at 18, where if you're a true freshman. College hockey is an absolutely beast of an animal where the structure and there's not a whole lot of scoring at times. I know the NCAA final had Western Michigan winning 6-2, but that rarely happens
Yeah.
in the Frozen Four. So there's so many angles and guys want to play, and it doesn't matter where you go. I know there was the desirability of not going to certain cities, and I know markets that, they lost out on a lot of times, but a lot of good markets did too. Cale Makar was listed and drafted by Medicine Hat, didn't play a game, went to UMass. So, but he
Yeah.
was drafted by Medicine Hat. So now I don't think you'll see that as much. And, it'll just be another way of, you know, recouping the best talent. That's why you're seeing expansion teams like Penticton and potentially Chilliwack. I know they've been announced, but I don't think there's a full ownership group. And now you got to kind of spread out the conference a little bit again. And does the East get a couple more teams? So where the rink's going to go? But that is another podcast for another day.
Yeah, I mean, with hockey in this country, it's a never-ending cycle. And I mean, you've been to a lot of the same tournaments I've been to and stuff like that. And obviously, you've done a lot of work in the Alberta Junior Hockey League with the Okotoks Oilers and everything like that. And just my whole thought on it, and again, we don't have to go down the road too deep, but there's a lot of very talented hockey players around, and some of them just because of a numbers game don't get an opportunity. And I just feel like maybe it doesn't lead to, well, this kid's going to be Sidney Crosby one day, but it's just more opportunities to play this sport for people, the better. And the longer you get those opportunities, I think better as well. And so I think this one just gives more opportunities, and maybe a couple of teams and a couple of leagues have to pivot what they're looking for. But ultimately, I think it is a very good thing for a lot of the players involved. Um, Looking at, I'm apparently very choked up about it though. Looking at the draft eligible players here for the Swift Current Broncos, you mentioned the ones kind of mentioned in the midterm rankings from NHL Central Scouting. You kind of touched on Peyton Kettles there before, but just like an absolute minutes eater for the Swift Current Broncos. You kind of gave a bit of a scouting report on him before and what he would need to be successful. Well, what did you see from him this year, and what would an NHL team be getting if they drafted a Peyton Kettles?
They're getting a guy who has a really good stick. It sounds really weird to say it, but because, Peyton still has not grown into his body yet. And he's 6 foot, I think he's 6'4", 6'5" right now. He's the only kid on the team that can stare me in the eye. And it's it's kind of crazy how much more ceiling he has to go when he develops. He was playing with Hunter Mayo in the playoffs. I think they were racking up 30 minutes a game against Matt Hatt, and that was tough assignments against McKenna, Weisblatt, Ryder Ritchie, all drafted and one maybe on a potential NHL deal one day in Weisblatt for the Tigers, and they were trying to shut them down. They kind of did it at the end of that series. The last couple of games kind of kept them in check, but they still were able to score. But he seems, if he makes a mistake, his backpedaling, he's not the most fleet of foot skater right now. But again, that stick just yoink. That it's incredible to watch him just put out fires really fast. And again, he is a PK1 defender. What? Yeah, like Gabranson's one. Like it sounds weird, but a Hal Gill. He really
Okay.
reminds me of just like a Hal Gill type, where it's defense first. And if he could develop his shot, great, but you can really start there with just how big, strong. He can shed, he can throw him. He didn't as much in the second half because I think you needed him to stay healthy in the lineup. He wasn't injury prone, but had a couple injuries due to fighting. So what do you do when you get hurt all the time and you fight? You stop doing it. But again, still tough. He's going to be mean next year. He just has to get meaner and stronger, and again fill into that body that he has, because he's a top 10 pick in the Western League for a reason. And I think the sky's the limit where he can go and how he wants to go about his business. It's the kind of team that wants him is going to be interesting.
Mm.
I don't know if he's going to be going to a high flying offensive team at the time. He's going to have a team with structure. You look at maybe some like a Carolina approach is kind of one. I know they have some really good skaters, but you can't teach huge. You can't teach big. So everybody wants one like that. And that's the big one for me coming out of the draft is Peyton.
Yeah, yeah, that size. As was said by a dude who ended up not being that great of a guy. You can't teach that.
Yes.
But no, I mean, it doesn't seem like the sexy thing. Like you're not growing up playing ball hockey, thinking about how great you're shutting down the top line. But then you look and oh, hey, that guy's a millionaire and has played for 7 to 10 years in the National Hockey League. Like it is not glamorous, but it is also a required trait, and one that can be not rewarded as well as a 60 goal scorer, but one that you can make a living off of that for a really long time.
Well, you could feed families. You know what?
Yeah.
You don't have to make 20,000. You don't have to make 20 million a year or 13. I don't know. I know the cap, everything's going to go up, and Peyton, if he does it right, is going to make a lot of money
Yeah.
being a defender. So that's where you see that. The rest of the group, it's going to be interesting because they're all 05s except for
Mhm.
Josh McGregor. So I think if somebody takes a flyer on it, I know the two Manitoba kids. Well, actually, all three of them. Actually, all four of them are from the province of Manitoba. I think for sure. I look at a guy like Brzezinski as an '05, had a career year. Winnipeg kid. I would love to see the Winnipeg Jets draft him just for his sake because he loves the Jets, and you want kids like that in Winnipeg. I think, and I think that'd be the same for anybody gets drafted, but a Winnipegger going to Winnipeg, I think, is extra special.
Yeah, I do want to get into to Mistlebacher here too a little bit. Like a play-by-play guy's dream because he has a missile of a shot and his name is Mistlebacher. So it works there. You mentioned that the birth certificate makes it maybe a bit of a unique situation, but he is at least someone that I think can play at least one next level, and there does seem to be some certainly pro-ready traits to steal some scouting terms. Well, what did you see from him this season?
Missile was an interesting player. I think he has a great snapshot wrist shot style that can make him elite. He does have hands, he does have boots. It's just more getting it together on maybe a more consistent basis and
Okay.
seeing that motor going. He can fly with the best if he can get going, get engaged, and be an absolute menace. Like he's got some of the best hands in the league at times. You look at some of the goals he's scored, especially in 3-on-3 overtime, which I know is a really bad sample to set. But those, you just look back at any game against the Moose Jaw Warriors or the Medicine Tigers this year, and you'll see what kind of player Luke Mistlebacher is because he just ran roughshod in the regular season against those clubs, and he just has he's a gamer. And
Hmm.
I don't think he truly understands how good he is yet. And I think that's just something that when you're a sign pick, no one, you know what, you're coming from the other side, and nobody wanted you a few years ago, but you're still playing in a league and career year with 42 goals and 93 points. The last guy to do that for the Broncos was Connor Geekie the year before, and a 40 goal scorer the first time since Josh Philman, and New Jersey Devils pick, who he played with, and is another shocker. All three of the guys I just said, they're also from the province of Manitoba. So there's a lot of Manitoba. It's the Manitoba Mafia in Swift Current. So this guy, I think Luke controls his destiny where he wants to go and how high he wants to go, or somebody takes a flyer on him. That's kind of the thing I've noticed with drafts is you're looking, okay, do I need to burn burn a pick on a player, or can I wait and invite him to a development camp and keep that relationship going? Then I can maybe sign him later, see how he does, and maybe he goes to college and or gets into a pro spot, and then you can still keep that runway going a little bit for Luke. So
Right.
I see the shot, and he can be a gamer. He can be the game changer at any given moment.
Yeah, like the two closest viewings I had were out here in Calgary, and obviously those games, the ice was kind of tilted a little bit at times with how the Hitmen were playing, but he just had that shot where everything would be down in the Broncos end for a while, and then he would rush back with it, and the puck, like if you want a definition of the puck jumps off of his stick, it's that one, and he has a shot that can just change a game in an instant, and that is so difficult to find now in the NHL. Like I call it like in basketball, scoring from distance. To be able to have that kind of weapon. You're right. If you can again, if you can kind of piece all of those things together, there certainly seems like there's something there with that kid. A couple other ones, Grayson Burzinski and Josh McGregor. Burzinski, it's funny. They're if you average them out, they have an average amount of experience with the Swift Current Broncos. Burzinski with Swift Current for a while. McGregor taking the scenic route to get to Swift Current with this being his rookie season. Just give me a couple thoughts on these two guys.
Brzezinski's kind of like a no fuss about it kind of offensive driving defenseman. He would be if you were to kind of put him in an NHL spot, like a high second pair with some offensive flash, but still again over 6 feet tall, and he's able to compete that way. I think he can make a good first pass out of his own zone, and that's also a skill you can teach, but you have to develop it over time. So I think that's a guy that's smoother, like not flashy, but kind of stealth under the radar. And I think for Josh McGregor's his intelligence is what makes him special. Is just that he can read plays, but he's still working with the junior game. Sometimes his thoughts are faster than his body, even though his body is also extremely fast. And that's just going to take some more maturation for him that you're going to try and see. He has the tools. I saw it a little bit in the playoffs and down the stretch in the regular season where he was playing a little bit more, and the shots will come. But I think just a full year under his belt, it was a great year for the Broncos in that aspect that they had the vets and the right rookies with a McFall or Burzit, or sorry, Daxon Urex, or also Josh McGregor that got some serious time in. And I think you're just going to add to that pile when you get into next season. But those guys will take a step. But I don't, it won't shock me that those two won't have a camp invite somewhere.
Let's shift gears now. After the Bronco season came to an end, your commentary did not, as you worked some color commentary with the Lethbridge Hurricanes for their matchup with the Calgary Hitmen. And again, I remember watching this Hitmen team following them down the stretch. It's like I don't know how you consistently beat this team. And Lethbridge is like, well, we've done it twice now. Has anything caught you off guard from what you've seen from the first two games of that series?
I mean, Jackson Unger has been a legend in the first two games. A Calgary kid shutting out the Hitmen in game one, and nothing was getting past him, I don't think. It was just how he played. And I saw this with Moose Jaw. And I didn't get to see him too much with Lethbridge because we had played all our games with Lethbridge except on Jan 10. And it was just a back and forth game. But Jackson Unger gives his team a chance to come back at any time. So, you know what? They've been in front of him the whole time. They've never trailed in this series yet, and they've won the special teams battle throughout. Their defense has just been a hair better on the back end for Lethbridge. You look at Caden Price, who's another Kraken pick. Wojtek Port, a underrated Anaheim Ducks pick, was one of those key defensive components for Moose Jaw last year when they won the whole shebang. And then you just Noah Chadwick, who's their captain, a Leafs pick, Logan McCutcheon. And then we also saw Grady Pichette play extremely well, Okotoks kids. So definitely have to give some props to that. And then all of a sudden, oh, right, Braden Yeager plays on this team, who Team Canada. I would like to see Braden take his game to the next level, but he doesn't play a bad game. It's just you'd like him to maybe be that game breaker. But Lethbridge's system is so sturdy. It doesn't matter if it was, Brent Kissio or now with Bill Peters at the wheel. They have a system that they put in, and whether you like it or not, it's successful for them, and they don't sheer away from it. And they broke the Hitmen in that first game. Calgary really got back to what made them successful throughout the season in game two. They dominated Lethbridge at times, but they couldn't solve Jackson Unger at all until literally 3 minutes left in regulation time. So it took a long period of time to finally solve him. And then boom, the next shift, Cooper Gazowski, 2 game-winning goals in this series already. So just clutch moments for Lethbridge. They're not scared and they don't play scared. And they're going to get heavier and meaner all the time. And that's something that Calgary just has to kind of overcome. I haven't seen the best from Carter Yakimchuk in this series, or maybe even Caleb Parker. The forwards and veterans and gold, they've checked every box. Lethbridge has won all. It's a narrow margin when you go to game two, but when you go from a long sort of sample of data, that's what you have is what Lethbridge has been able to do for basically 120 minutes. Hold the Calgary Hitmen to 1 goal.
Yeah, that's
One.
wild to think about when you see the scoring depth of the Calgary team. I was going to ask, well, what does Calgary need to do to play better? And I guess the answer, or to get back into the series, and I guess the overall answer is just kind of be better at hockey, like just play maybe a little bit better. Is that kind of it, or are there a couple of not saying that they're bad at it, but just like kind of get back to what they've been doing? Or is there something specific that you've seen that they need to do as this series heads a little bit further south here in Alberta?
I mean, I'm not sure. I think it's just you kind of got goalied for 2 games. Like I
Okay.
look at their third period in game one was really good. They were down 3-0 at that point. So that's a hard comeback in junior to do. Two is easy, three is hard. And but even in game two, they outshot and outplayed Lethbridge in that first period, 11-5, but Lethbridge never bent. They never gave up a goal. Like Unger was terrific. And the third period, again, Calgary kind of came out swinging. And again, Jackson Unger just happened to be right there. Ben Kindle, I think, played a really good game. He ends up with the goal, and that's not why he played a great game. But you know what? I haven't seen Oliver Tolkien as high, so maybe there's some
Mm.
underlying injuries there. Daniel Hauser did not play in game two. And Anders Miller, who came in relief, was incredible. And I would guess that Miller is going to start game three because we see that Hauser is hurt again. It all goes through there, but maybe you found something with Anders Miller, and that's something that Brad Curl and I talked about. I said, "Is Miller the real deal?" I said, "Well, he hasn't ever really played horrible this season for the Hitmen, and he's a draft eligible goaltender this year, so I could definitely see a flyer on that one as well for whoever would like to take a chance on him." He was an NCAA commit, and then when the rules changed, boom, ends up in Calgary, so it works out really well for him in his favor. And yeah, if you're Calgary, you're hoping eventually what you've been doing right, which they have done a lot of things right, just finally outweighs what Lethbridge has been able to do right. It's gonna be very hard at the NMAX, or sorry, at the visit Lethbridge.com arena
Mm.
for the next 2 games. And if they could get on a crowd that's going to be raucous, it'll be 6,000 plus. That building has always been loud, even when it's been so-called, not a very good night in Lethbridge. So Lethbridge has a really good chance here. I think you take two, and you're either going to see this go back and Calgary runs it back a pair, and then we go back to what we were going to see, or else, Lethbridge will just run over them.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And like you said, I mean, at playoff time, we see this a ton where, okay, we were pretty happy with how we played in that game. But now we can only lose one more time or our season's over. It's quite a bit of pressure. And then you add, like you said, electric atmosphere in Lethbridge, and it's 18, 19, and 20-year-olds playing some of the biggest games of their lives. It's what makes this chaos so much fun. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it all kind of plays out. Gino, this has been a blast, man. Like I said, you are a beautiful human being. Enjoy the off season, even though it did come a little bit quicker than you would like. Hopefully, I get to see you at the ballpark out in Okotoks a time or five this season. But thank you for everything you've done for me. Congrats on I would say, successful first year in the province of Saskatchewan, and looking forward to chatting again.
My pleasure, PK. Anytime.
Thank you.